Stone Cold Prose, building better words.
So who the hell am I to tell you anything? What's my deal? What's my story? What makes me qualified to comment about the things I talk about on this channel? Well, I do have a little blurb I do at the beginning of every video, but a few people have called me out on specifics, so now I'm going to get specific, as specific as I dare to get in the age of social media. Hi guys, welcome back to Stone Cold Prose, where we build better words, better thoughts, and better men. I'm Miles Watson, novelist and author of numerous award-winning series including Cage Life, Sinner's Cross, and The Chronicles of Magnus. I worked in Hollywood for 12 years, law enforcement for another 10, and now I break it all down and build it back better. So let's get into this. So that there was my standard intro. I left it at that because I figured who the hell cared about my background, and why would anyone sit still for a biography of someone that they've never even heard of? After all, most people who come to this channel either trip into it via the algorithm or they catch one of my short form videos and they follow it to its source. They don't actually know who I am. But since I like to opine about such subjects as the entertainment industry, writing, men's health, politics, martial arts, and so on and so forth, I guess it's fair play to take you on a deeper dive so that you can judge for yourself if I have any more right than the next man to bloviate about such topics. So I grew up in the Beltway, inside the Beltway. My parents were journalists, and my father covered the White House for many, many years. It would be fair and accurate to say I grew up immersed in politics and government, since in my own family and in the families of my friends, everybody seemed to work for either the newspapers, the president, this or that congressman, this or that federal agency, lobbyists, whatever. The first few jobs I had as a teenager, two of them were at newspapers, and one was as a kind of gopher for a retired deputy director of the CIA. My uncle was a big deal in the FBI. My neighbors were doctors at the NIH, and one of my friends' dads was actually an ambassador. And a buddy of mine worked for an infamous lobbyist when we were still in high school. He wrote a novel about it too. Nothing unusual about any of that. The industries of Washington, D.C. are principally politics and government, no shit, just as the industry of Los Angeles is principally entertainment. If you grow up or live in either place, you'll rub shoulders with people who make those industries go. And growing up in D.C. with a dad who had his own chair in the White House press room, meeting senators and spies and presidents and famous journalists, I got a pretty thorough education in how Washington works and does not work. When you have not one but two relatives in the White House press corps, it can't be any other way. And while this does not bestow any magical powers of understanding upon me, I do view things in Washington from an angle that is unique to people who grew up in and work in that environment. So that was my political education. It wasn't formal. The way you'd study a language, it was acquired. The way you'd learn your native language via immersion and exposure. I don't hold myself out as an expert on foreign or domestic politics, but I do speak the lingo fluently. Now we come to my 10 years in law enforcement bit. Truth is, I have never known entirely how to sum up how I have spent half of my professional life. I hold a bachelor's degree in criminal justice with a concentration in law enforcement. I chose to study criminal justice because while I always wanted to be a writer, even as a teenager, I knew writing was not a sure path to riches. And in any event, growing up in a suburb where two squirrels fighting in the front yard was an occasion to call the police, I wanted some hard, real-world experience to knock the suburban softness out of me. So when I graduated from college, I took the first job in the field that I was offered, that of a probation and parole officer. This was my only active law enforcement experience, i.e. a job where you arrested people, applied and served for warrants, transported prisoners to jail after you took them into custody, interviewed prisoners in jail, had to go to an academy and certify an arrest techniques, speed cuffing, etc., and so on. From there, I transferred to the local district attorney's office as a pre-sentence investigator, which was a suit and tie desk job, although for some reason I did attend several autopsies on murder cases, and after 6 months I was promoted to supervisor of the unit. Now, this is a job which fell firmly in the category of criminal justice, but not law enforcement. At one point, I very nearly convinced the chief county detective to send us all to a state police academy so we could do more formal investigative work for the office, but he ended up going to jail before the plans saw fruition. See, it turns out that confiscated guns you're supposed to destroy are supposed to be destroyed and not end up in your gun safe at home. In any event, I resigned from that job after another 2 years, bored and burned out by too much paperwork and the petty politics that arise in an office packed with lawyers. Also because I had already been promoted to the highest position I could ever attain without getting a law degree. Wasn't interested in that. I took 6 months off to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with myself, and when my money ran out, I took a job as a correctional specialist in a different state. Now, although this is a Bureau of County Prisons type job, it's not to be confused with a correctional officer. Although I did go to the Correctional Academy where I graduated with honors, I didn't wear a uniform or work in a jail. I worked in an office building we shared with the county police. I was half social worker, half probation officer, and all confused. See, I could play one role or the other, but not both. I could hold your hand, or I could kick your ass, but I couldn't alternate between the two, and after 2 years of that, coupled with some ethical problems I had about the nature of the work I was doing, it came off sometimes as a cash grab rather than as a public service. I decided to leave criminal justice forever and start over again. I went back to college and, long story less long, ended up in graduate school studying writing. As I said, I always wanted to be a writer. I actually published my first short story at the age of 17 in a Canadian literary magazine called Greens. And I also had placed in several contests, one of which was overseen by Reynolds Price and another by E.L. Doctorow. Now, I wanted it to go all the way and really devote myself to the thing I knew I did better than anything else. And while I was working on my degree, I elected to move to Los Angeles and try my hand at the entertainment industry at the same time. It had always been kind of a lowercase dream of mine to work in that industry in some capacity, and in any event, I was in my mid-30s and I knew if I didn't try my hand at it then, I'd age out and completely just never ever get a shot, so off I went. I lived 12 years and 9 months in LA, and with the exception of the usual temp jobs everybody works at while trying to break into the industry, I spent nearly all of it either in makeup effects or video games. Now, in regards to makeup effects, my history is fairly, if not completely, documented on my IMDB page, which you are welcome to visit. The link is in the description. To sum it up, I worked for 3 or more makeup effects studios on 24 different movies and TV shows, including Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, CSI, New York, True Blood, Heroes, Umbrella Academy, Castle Rock, The Orville, Underworld 4, Equalizer 2. My roles included office coordinator, which is kind of an in-house line producer, makeup effects technician, which is kind of a helper monkey to an actual makeup effects artist, and prosthetic makeup effects artist, which means that I helped make prosthetic appliances that were used on the show. Also production assistant, which is just the underpaid foot soldier who does whatever the hell task he's told to do, usually the ones no one else wants to do for very low pay. I guess during that time I probably worked on about 175 episodes of TV or so, although 50 give or take are missing from my bio, whatever IMDb is. I mention this because working in TV and film is one thing I do actually know about at the sweaty, dirty, inglorious grunt level, which is actually a great way to learn anything, by the way, especially in an industry that takes so little account of its foot soldiers that it forgets they're there and often acts poorly in front of them. Right, Dr. Phil? I also worked very extensively in video games. In fact, I worked more in video games than anything else. Specifically, I worked at 7 different trailer houses over 9 years, helping make video game trailers for dozens of different titles, but most of my time was spent on variations of the Call of Duty and Battlefield franchises. I estimate I probably spent 8,000 hours working on video game campaigns and commercials. One of the Call of Duty campaigns I worked on actually won a Cannes Lion, which is the most prestigious award you can win in marketing. I've always wanted the statue for my trophy case, but it costs 1,200 euros, so I don't think I'll be getting it anytime soon. Anyway, my job there was called Game Capture Technician, which is often confused with Motion Capture Technician. Very different things. A stickman, as Game Capture Techs were called, is someone who plays video games to direction, rather like a virtual actor on a virtual set. A director blocks your scene and you move and jump and shoot and get blown up and blow up other people according to a screenplay of sorts, which is written to advertise the game and make it look really cool. The editors do a lot of that. You do as many takes as you need to get the shot and then you move on to the next shot. It's fun and very chill to the point of reminding me of my fraternity house days, but also incredibly time consuming and repetitious, and it calls for immensely long hours, and you will absolutely get fat from sitting 16 hours a day while stuffing your face with every known form of carbohydrate. I remember one gig on the Sunset Strip. When I began, I actually had a six-pack. By the end, I had a keg. In any event, when I talk about games and gaming, my perspective may be opinionated and wrong, but it's not an outsider's perspective. Again, I have earned my stripes in that field, and again, while they're only like a corporal's stripes, they were awarded fairly and squarely. Whether it was the Ant Farm, Buddha Jones, AV Squad, GNet, Eisenberg Studios, Aspect Ratio, or 72 and Sunny, my blood is thick on those walls. So now we come to my writing, which I will touch on only briefly because I do intend to use this platform more than I have before to promote my books in the future. But for now, let's just say the following. I published my first novel, Caged Life, via a micro publisher called 19 Books in 2016. It won the Best Indie Book Award. It was Zealot Script's Book of the Year, a reader's favorite 5 stars, a Shelf Unbound runner-up, and a reader's favorite bronze medalist. And not to blow my own horn, because I'm not flexible enough, that was par for the course. My subsequent novels, Knuckle Down, Sinner's Cross, The Very Dead of Winter, and Exiles, A Tale from the Chronicles of Magnus, along with my short story collection, Devils You Know, and various of my 6 or 7 novellas, have won between them 3 Best Indie Book Awards, 2 Literary Titan Gold Medals, 2 Book Excellence Awards, 3 Pinnacle Book Achievement Awards, a Reader's Favorite Gold Medal, 6 Reader's Favorite 5-star ratings, a Historical Fiction Company Silver Medal, a Historical Fiction Company 5 stars rating, a Shelf Unbound runner-up, and a Writer's Digest honorable mention, and a Digital Book Awards bronze. I'm also a Hoffer Award finalist, and I was longlisted for the Hemingway Award. My most successful novel to date is called Sinner's Cross, a World War II novel that was several times an Amazon bestseller, and I've also been hired to write a screenplay adapted from a book, not mine if you were wondering, recap sequences for TV shows on Nickelodeon, and written everything from commercials to industrial films to interactive museum displays. And I also do paid book proposals. I have a master's in fine arts in writing popular fiction. I had an agent, and I've resumed submitting manuscripts to traditional publishers. In fact, one of my unpublished novels got a full manuscript request from an agent last week. I have to send that off when I'm done here. I'm also a regular presenter at the In Your Right Mind conference held every year at Seton Hill University, usually on the subjects of writing violence and writing dialogue. So while I'm no Stephen King and have the empty bank account to prove it, when I talk about writing, I do have some small claim on knowing what the hell I'm talking about. Some. Now, in 2020, I left Los Angeles, and more specifically, the industry of Hollywood. I was burned out, depressed, and frustrated beyond the ability of words to communicate. Like a lot of people grinding on the outer edge of the industry, the closer I got to breaking through into a place where I actually mattered and my ideas and talents got a fair hearing, the harder that industry seemed to push back against me. One minute, I was on the red carpet at the Writer of the Future Awards with a beautiful woman on my arm, and the next I was covered in foam latex in a sweltering effects shop in Chatsworth, making $25 an hour to breathe in ammonia fumes so powerful that they gave me migraine headaches and heart palpitations and chronic insomnia. One minute I was sitting down with producers worth $100 million and pitching my ideas to them, and the next I was pushing my broken down old Honda off Hollywood Way at rush hour, wondering where the money to fix the fucking transmission was going to come from. And this constant back and forth between high hopes and cruel, squalid realities wore me out. Like a junkie or a vampire, I was always on the make for the next score. The trouble with this being that when I did score, when I got the next gig, whatever the gig was, part of me was already living in the time after the score, when I'd have to start prowling again. Any actor will tell you that the worst part of the job is waiting for the phone to ring. And that's true for the whole industry. No matter how much work you're getting, and I've worked 3 gigs at the same time, you know that it will dry up eventually. The money that's coming in can't be spent because it has to be saved against the weeks or months or maybe even one whole year that you've got no income at all, not even unemployment eventually because you drained that sucker dust dry. So and I went back east, back to the district attorney's office, this time as an advocate for victims of crime. I could a tale unfold about this gig and the 4+ years I spent at it before I moved on, but suffice to say that it was another education in the many-faceted world of criminal justice. And that's where the 10+ years in law enforcement and criminal justice in my intro comes from. A little from column A and a little from column B. I've never been a cop or a federal agent, and I'm not an attorney, and please the gods I never will become one, but I've seen the system from 4 or 5 different angles, and I feel well qualified to comment on it. I've been in crack houses, professionally, not recreationally. I've arrested people on parole warrants. I've had heroin addicts rub off the scabs on their arms on the edge of my desk. I've transported people with dirty charges to prisons. I've patrolled on foot and in police cars with police officers and state troopers, and I've been heckled by 100 horny female inmates when passing through the female wing of a county prison. And boy, is that an uncomfortable experience. So yeah, will I open my mouth on the subject of law and order if I choose? You damn right I will. But take it for what it's worth. One man's perspective. And that's all any YouTube channel is. One man's perspective, or woman's. I'm trying to be more transparent than most about who I am and where I come from, while still retaining an air of mystery and intrigue. So, having said all that, and to paraphrase Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross, that's who the fuck I am. For better and for worse. My goal with this channel, honestly, was 100 subs, and I've long since passed it. So as I creep towards 1,000 subs, I want to make sure everyone knows who I am and who I'm not. Because if Hollywood taught me anything, it's that being genuine may not pay, but it's good for the soul. Folks, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and remember to check out my books that I rambled on about. The link is in the description. I drop scripted content every Friday at 3 p.m., shorts almost every day, and unscripted rambles whenever rage moves me to do so. I'll see you next time, and until then, stay cold.